Dear friends, welcome to the first interview of our Theosophical podcast. And we are happy to interview Pablo Sender. And I think, Pablo, we could start with you introducing yourself and saying a few words about your background.
All right, thank you, and welcome everyone. I have been a member of the Theosophical Society since I was more or less 21 years old. So I've been in the TS for more than half of my life, and it has been a wonderful journey. My background is in science. I found the TS when I was in college. I was studying microbiology. Then I did a PhD in molecular biology. But I always say that Theosophy killed my love for science because it showed me a far wider universe. I mean, I like science, but compared to the view that Theosophy provides of the universe, what we research in science is limited to the physical plane. And I don't know, for some reason, I just lost the inspiration as the years went by, and felt more inclined to dedicate my time and my energy to this, to Theosophy. I am fortunate that I can work. My daily job, let's say, is working in education for the Theosophical Society in America and for the Crotona Institute of Theosophy. And I feel that at least me in particular, each of us are different, and of course science is important in the growth and of humanity, but I feel that I can help better working in theosophical education than what I could do in science. So currently I live in the Theosophical Institute of Theosophy that is called Crotona. This is a small theosophical community that is in California, north of Los Angeles. And there are about 25 of us who live here. And then I live here with my wife. We moved here about 7 years ago. And so that's more or less, I think, enough background. If you want us to look into something else, just, let me know.
Your microphone, Clover, your microphone.
Thank you for giving us a self-introduction, Pablo. And how would you say is unique? What would you say is unique about Theosophy as compared to other spiritual movements?
Mm-hmm. I think we all may find different aspects of Theosophy that seem meaningful or different for us. Something that I find is what we may call the explanatory power that Theosophy has, because we are in an age where we need to understand something before we embrace it in general. Perhaps a few hundred years ago, it was enough to tell people, just be kind, and that was enough. But today our minds are overstimulated, and they search for knowledge and answers and justifications. And I think Theosophy, because it is an expression of the ancient wisdom that was formulated in this age, it was formulated with a lot of explanation so that we can approach it not only with our devotion and our action for service, but also as a sound philosophy that can explain things that in life are difficult to understand. And when our minds don't understand the mind rebels. Why is there so much injustice? Why do we have to do these disciplines? Why can't I do that or this? There is a sound explanation for all of this. And I think the message, as Theosophists always say, the central message is common to all the different traditions, spiritual traditions. In general, they, at least in the public aspect that we have access to, the other traditions don't necessarily go so much in detail explaining reality.
Thank you very much for that. Speaking about your background, how exactly did you come in contact with Theosophy or the Theosophical Society?
Mm-hmm. Since I was young, I was always interested in some kind of philosophy or view of life that was not what we normally get from our culture. I remember I think I was 10 around that time, and I saw a couple of books that were in my family's library. One was on the pyramids of Egypt, another was on Atlantis, another was on UFOs. And I started reading that and was very interested in it. And then as I went through my teen years, I studied some New Age books. And somehow always I felt that was very interesting, but I felt that it was superficial. After reading a couple of books, I thought, okay, this is all that there is here. There is no more depth. So I would move on to something else. So when I was 20, I wanted to learn how to meditate. And I lived in a small city that there was nothing except for some yoga classes and for the Theosophical Society. So talking to my mom, she was going to yoga. Her teacher was a member of the society, so she knew about it. And she said, let's go and check it out. And so we went to the TS in my city, and they were giving a class on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which includes meditation and all that. So I was really happy. And when I saw the library with all those books that were the kind of books that I like to read, that to me was wonderful. And then a few months after I started going to the TS, the youth group in Argentina, which was quite large. We had about 60 young people around the country. And they used to meet every year in our Theosophical Center. So the people in my lodge said, why don't you go and meet all these young people? And so I eventually did. And it was very special. Really, this was, many years ago, and we are still friends, always communicating. Well, I'm not in Argentina, but we are always communicating through WhatsApp. It was very important growing together theosophically. So that's how I came to the TS.
So would you say that your youth group played a huge part in kind of helping you develop your love for Theosophy, and like the fellowship was it really important for you? Like for me, it was really, really important. Like the human aspect of it. Yeah. So, and I think without my youth group, like Theosophy would still be the same, of course, but I'm studying Theosophy and living it together with the youth group kind of brings it to life. Yeah. How was it like for you in the youth group?
I think it was essential. It was the best thing that could have happened. I think it was such a strong experience. As I said, that we are still friends. We still get together. Well, over there they do. When I go there, we all get together. The core group of Theosophists that where they are still in the TS, and they are all quite involved with the TS. Actually, the current president or general secretary of the TS in Argentina, he was just elected a month ago or so. He was part of the youth group. And so it was something that was very special. I don't know what kind of relationship and also understanding of Theosophy I would have now if not for the youth group. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity we had.
Thank you. I would like to ask you if your formal education that you received in scientific area, does it help you to understand and practice Theosophy in any way? And what is you already mentioned that it killed your love for science, but maybe there is some mutual influence that Theosophical occupations and your formal education have on each other.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I suppose it did help me, mainly because as you go through science, I guess there is a training in trying to think accurately, and so I suppose obviously I bring that kind of mind to my studies in Theosophy. I'm not sure how my approach would be if not for my scientific education. On the other hand, sometimes it may also be an obstacle, something you have to struggle with, because in science you try to define everything very precisely and separate things and categorize things, and that's great on a certain aspect of the study, but also we need to develop a different kind of mind that is more abstract and that is able to grasp commonalities rather than just classify and separate. And I think I may have struggled because of my scientific formation, but certainly it does shape the way that I study and that I share Theosophy with others. I'm not super interested in exploring the interface between Theosophy and science, although I often do because people ask me, since they know that I have a scientific background, sometimes they ask me, could you talk about Theosophy and science? And of course I enjoy it and do it. But I guess I don't really need the science to support Theosophical teachings. My feeling is that Theosophical teachings have a reality in themselves, and I know the limitations of science. So to me, that science agrees or doesn't agree doesn't necessarily mean much. But I suppose it does help me look at Theosophy in a more scientific way too.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because I think the relationship between Theosophy and science is a very interesting one, because I think maybe what you mentioned was the science that you were mentioning, right? Kind of like modern science, like more on the material level. Mm-hmm. And then I feel like, the more abstract level of consciousness that probably a lot of us cannot tap into yet is what Theosophy opens up to us. And probably, would you call that also like kind of, does it expand? It's still science, but it's expanded in a way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's I think a good point. Let us suppose we talk about meditation. So some scientists have spent probably millions or thousands and thousands of dollars trying to trace the brain and the activity of the brain when a person is meditating and all that. And that's great. right? But after all that money and time and energy, they are highest or deepest conclusion is meditation changes the brain in positive ways. So what the conclusion of science is, I think for most of us, is just the beginning. We know that meditation, or let me talk for myself. I mean, I have no doubts that meditation changes us in positive ways. So I don't need science to justify that. I mean, it's nice if science justifies it, but our exploration starts where science ends, and in realms, as you said, that science cannot penetrate. This is an inner journey of probing into the different states of consciousness in us, which are things that science simply cannot touch. These are beyond the realm of science. So that's what I mean. I mean, it's nice if science supports the spirituality, but I don't think science can prove anything that is beyond the material, because whatever can fall in the realm of science is that which can be measured by material instruments. So whatever is not material in the sense of physical, by definition will always be beyond the realm of science, at least science how we practice it today.
I've always been really bad at science. I think since young. But yeah, and I think Theosophy got me interested in exploring different levels of consciousness, and just to be aware that there's levels of consciousness beyond the material is very mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, so
anyway, let me say one more thing. I don't want to discourage people who want to work in the interface of science and theosophy. I think that's a very interesting work. And I do help. I was part of a team that was producing this website and e-newsletter. Research is relevant to theosophy. And I think all that is very valuable. So I'm not trying to put that down. It's just that personally, as I discovered the depth of theosophy, that took me away from science. That's all I need.
Yeah, well, it is my feeling that when science tries to investigate this unexplained phenomena, they come up with more questions rather than with more answers. And I fully agree with you, but maybe there is a hope that it may push science to some new kind of approach in research. Yes, picking up on that, maybe you could say a few words about the kind of meditation that you practice, if it's not a too personal question, because some people don't really like speaking about it.
Yeah, no, sure. So, because meditation was one of, it was the main aspect of the spiritual life that I was exploring when I came to Theosophy. I have always been interested in that. So I did some research when I was working at the national headquarters of the Theosophical Society in America. We have there a wonderful library. So after work, I would go to the library and start going book by book and looking in the contents and the index to see if there was anything about meditation. So I went through all the books in the Theosophical section because I wanted to know what kind of meditations are recommended in Theosophical literature. So I found 7-8 different techniques of meditation recommended by several theosophists, like 4 or 5 would recommend this technique and 3 or 4 this other technique, etc. And I think it's wonderful. It's a wonderful set of different techniques because we are all different. That's something that I like in theosophy. There isn't a universal pill that we are offering for humanity and that everybody should take that pill, because we are all different and the same approaches don't necessarily work with everyone. So there are all these different kinds of techniques that some are more intellectual, some are more devotional, some are more mentally active, some are more about awareness, etc. So I have practiced them all throughout the years, and I follow my intuition, my sense of what I have to work, what I feel that I need to work on. So, you know, I may work with a technique for a couple of years, and then gradually incorporate some other element, and then after a while I'm doing something different. I think I take meditation not as following blindly a technique, but more as an inner exploration, and all techniques are tools that are there for us to use in that exploration. So right now, I guess part of what I'm exploring is there is this idea in theosophy about the personal consciousness, what we call the personality, that is our daily mind, the lower mind, the concrete mind, and then the emotions and the body. And then there is another center of consciousness that is what we call the spiritual individuality, or the higher ego, or the higher mind. And crossing that bridge between the lower and the higher mind, I think is, well, we see in our literature that is an essential task or spiritual journey. Now, before we can try to cross that bridge, we have to bring our lower mind, our emotions, and our body under control, or we have to have mastery over the mind, emotions, and the body, because this exploration happens in silence, when there is a state of silence and quietness. And then in that state of silence, you try to, let's say, penetrate into the different levels of silence, let's put it. This is all a little complex. I'm trying to simplify. So that's what I'm trying in my daily meditation. I'm, you know, trying to go deeper into that silence and connect with the deeper source in ourselves. I use a method similar to what Jeffrey Hodgson, he was a theosophist who died in 1983, I think. And he wrote a little technique, a yoga of light. And that technique is quite interesting. I have modified some things, but basically the technique that I'm using is similar to what he suggests in a yoga of light.
Oh, so it's dissociation from the lower bodies?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How have you modified it?
Well, the part of this, so the first part, as you say, is to realize that we are not the body, we are not the emotions, we are not the mind. And Hodgson gives a very simple technique of just saying, you know, I'm not the body, and trying to realize the truth behind that. I mean, it's not that the body is not part of us. The body is part of us, it's part of our expression, but we are far more than the body. And when the body dies, we are still there. Therefore, we are not the body in particular. Same with the emotions and the mind. Now, to make that dissociation more, perhaps more real, you can work that out a little more and try to really feel when you say, I'm not the body, and then try to move your center of consciousness to the emotional body or astral body. And then you can try to spend some time there, kind of imagine that you don't have a physical body, and imagine you are in the astral body, and then harmonize the emotions there and try to make it as real as possible, the sense, I am not the body. Right now, I'm in a different body, in the astral body. And then you do the same, you leave the astral body behind and you go to the mental body, all in imagination, but a clairvoyant that is seeing your meditation would see how the the center of consciousness, that is like a little spark, is actually moving from body to body. So there are some things like that that you can try to do to make it more real, the idea of going beyond the bodies. And then the other part is trying to realize that you are the higher self. And he suggests some affirmations. I don't use the affirmations, I use more of a kind of meditation, meditating on the different qualities of the higher self, like the fact that the higher self is omnipresent. So you try to feel that you are expanding in all space and time, as Blavatsky mentions in the diagram of meditation. First, in imagination, feel that you are expanding in all space and time. Well, first, all space, then the idea is that we as the higher self are eternal, so we are beyond time. Then the idea that we as a higher self are beyond thoughts, emotions, and sensations. We are a pure state of awareness. So you try to bring about those states. So I work a little more in that way instead of repeating an affirmation, because it helps me feel the reality of those states more than with the affirmations.
Same here. I think the affirmations can be are very powerful, but for me, it's a little bit hard for me to be able to sort of think of, like, really put myself into the role of my spiritual self when I just say the affirmations. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think what you said is it's a very helpful way. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. There is in the channel, the YouTube channel of the Theosophical Society in America has, I recorded a meditation, more or less how I do it personally. I recorded it for one of the conventions, the summer convention. I think it's called Meditation on the Higher Self, something like that. And it's like a 20-minute guided meditation. So if you or anybody wants to see if that technique is helpful, then you can look it up in the TSA channel. But again, there are many techniques. As I said, this is the way I happen to be working on this at the time. I have worked with other techniques, so we should explore and then see which one feels inspiring at the time. Of course, we have to give it some time. We can't try a technique only once. We have to give it some time so that a technique of meditation is like a seed that we have to nourish until it begins to sprout. So we have to give it some time, but then we may discover that technique it's not all that inspiring, and then we can try to search for another technique. I put together a website, very basic website with material on all the different techniques. It's called, the URL is Zyan Theosophy, Zyan like in the stanzas of Zyan, DZYAN Theosophy.org. So there is some material about all these different techniques that if somebody is interested in exploring the different techniques, that can help.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. Changing the subject, we spoke about the connection between science and theosophy a little bit. And what about theosophy and religion? How are they related in general, do you think, and in your personal experience also?
Mm-hmm. Yes, Blavatsky claimed that there was what she called a wisdom religion, an ancient wisdom religion, from which all the different religions that we know came. This ancient wisdom religion was, well, if you read in The Secret Doctrine, in the second volume, she explains that at the beginning of human civilization, in the third root race, there was no religion because humanity was still very spiritual, innocent, like a child that was very devoted and spiritual. As humanity moved to the next evolutionary cycle that we call root races, to the fourth, then that spirituality began to be lost. So the masters of wisdom had to start teaching a religion. And that's where religion started for humanity. And then throughout all these two evolutionary cycles, the fourth root race and the fifth one that we are in, every now and then one of the masters of wisdom comes and offers some truths to humanity. Now, what she claimed is that this wisdom religion is the complete wisdom, but as a complete wisdom is not available to humanity. The different religions have different aspects of truth of that wisdom, which were necessary at the time. And Theosophy is also an expression of that wisdom religion. Theosophy is not the totality of that wisdom religion. It's an expression. But it is an expression in which there was an effort to give us some tools to be able to recognize the aspects of that wisdom religion that are in all different religions in the world. So if we know Theosophy, then we can start recognizing a lot of common elements in the different religions and see how they present them, because each religion presents things differently. I think if we study how Buddhism, for example, talks about the ultimate reality, like shunya or shunyata, we get an insight, a particular insight about the ultimate reality, but it is a partial insight. Then we can study Hinduism. In Hinduism, there is more the idea of purna, the totality. And then we get a different insight that we can get from Buddhism. And thus we can see how the different traditions explain reality. And with all these different insights, we can have a more complete view than if we stick only to one. So I have been interested in studying religions to some extent. It's similar with science. When I study religions, I have studied to a, let's say, decent amount of understanding Buddhism and the different schools in Hinduism, some of Neoplatonism, and then of the rest I have just a superficial knowledge. And I find them interesting, but again, if I compare them with the Theosophical view, I feel that the Theosophical view is deeper. Now, this is my own conditioning. I'm sure that a very devoted Buddhist finds everything he or she needs in that religion. So I'm not claiming Theosophy is the best for everybody. But the short answer would be, I'm interested in the religions. I like to see how the different religions explain the nature of the deity, the absolute, the path, salvation, etc., because it gives us different ways of looking at that. And my theosophical knowledge, I think, helps me understand that in a way that perhaps without that knowledge I couldn't.
So were you in did you have a particular religion of your own growing up before getting to know Theosophy, and how did your practice, like how did your view of that religion change?
Yeah, yes, in Argentina, especially when I was growing up, like 90% of people are Catholics. Today, probably the percentage is far lower, but you are just born into Catholicism. And my family was not super religious, but my mom is kind of religious. She doesn't go to mass every Sunday, but my aunt was a nun, So we had some influence from the religion. And I always liked when I went to communion, then confirmation. They had a youth group when I was 14, very a teen group. And I always enjoyed it, but I had my own beliefs. I don't know, for example, I don't know when I heard or how I heard about reincarnation. But even when I was going to Sunday school, things like that, I knew that the Christian religion doesn't support reincarnation, but I always believed that was true. And somehow it didn't bother me. I just thought, well, this is true. It's just that they don't talk about it. And
so the idea of reincarnation was just intuitive to you?
I really don't know. I suppose I read it somewhere. I don't remember when I read it for the first time. But, I read about Egypt and all these things, as I said, when I was a kid. So I'm sure that I encountered that teaching, and it just felt natural, and I just assumed it. So I was quite active in the church until I was more or less 15. After confirmation, then I stopped going to church. But I never felt really a tension between theosophy and my Christian religion at the time. And I actually like the Christian mystics very much. I think they have found, a lot of things that theosophical teachings talk about, and we can learn a lot about their journey and their approaches. So yeah, I never really felt much tension between the religion that I grew up with and theosophy, but I always never was quite fundamentalist or anything.
I would also like to know what you think about why, because youths these days, or at least youths in Singapore, they are very much attracted to going to church. And of course, here we call them cell groups. So they're like small little youth groups where there's a shepherd. And then under the shepherd, she would have a few sheep. So kind of like a mentor. And then we would have concert last time when I used to attend church. Mm-hmm. There would be like a band playing on the stage and all that. So what are your views on why is going to church, young people do like going to church a lot these days, and how can theosophy or the ancient wisdom I feel like it's so much more mind-opening, so much richer, and it helps us appreciate our religion so much more. But how is it that we can sort of help youth see the beauty of theosophy?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting that is happening in Singapore. Like here in the US, it's the opposite. The young people more and more are rejecting religion, and I think in Europe also, for what I read. So there must be some places. I'm not sure. I haven't read any statistics like from South America or from Argentina, but in some parts of the world, the youth is leaving religion. I think an important aspect why people are attracted to religion, especially today, in the past, there was a lot of fear instilled in people. If you don't believe in this, you are going to hell. I don't think that plays so much of a role. Of course, in fundamentalist movements, it does. But in general, I think we have advanced too much in education and understanding and science for most people to take hell literally. So I think one of the main motivations is the social aspect. As you say, I remember when I was a teenager going to Mass and people singing in Mass and clapping and all that. And the older people thought that was bad, that was very unspiritual. but the church had to adapt to attract younger people, and there is a strong sense of belonging, of community, of having fun and being entertained that I think people seek. I see many times people coming to the TS trying to seek for a similar kind of social, activity, which in general we don't have much. I mean, we have the study groups, of course, our lodges and study groups, or we have, if we have a meditation, meeting or our conventions, but it's more intellectual, of an intellectual nature. So I think that many people need that more social aspect. And also, I'm okay with people believing what helps them. Because if there are some people that the theosophical teachings are not inspiring, they are, whatever it is, their understanding or the nature of their personality needs something different from what theosophy can provide. So if we somehow, destroy what they have, but then they cannot get what we offer, they don't find it useful, then we would leave them in a worse place. And we should always be careful not to do that. We want for people, or at least this is how I see it, we want for people, after they interact with us, to be in a better place than they were before. And many times it is just deepening their own understanding, their understanding of their own religion. So if I talk to Christian people, I don't try to teach them theosophy. I try to help them see Christianity in a deeper way, which is a more theosophical way. But I don't try them to believe in reincarnation or understand reincarnation or karma. So how can we help them? If anything, is by helping them understand religion deeper. So we can do, I have done some activities on esoteric Christianity. For those who may be interested, and you can give some lectures or study groups. We have a lot of information about esoteric Christianity. And then if somebody is inclined to theosophy, naturally that person will start learning theosophy. But otherwise, I feel people should belong to whatever religion can help them be better.